Welcome along to the ABC Financial Intensive Series. I'm your host, Chantal Broderick. Our intensive shows are designed specifically to be like a short course where you'll learn practical steps throughout the episode. Our expert guest for this show is Dr. Paul Bedford, and he'll be walking us through steps to creating a retention plan for your fitness business. Let me tell you a little bit about our expert guest. Dr. Paul Bedford has over 20 years experience working in the fitness industry, including roles as a gym instructor, personal trainer, fitness manager, and club manager. He has a master's degree in exercise and health behaviours and a PhD from the London Sports Institute. The aim of his PhD research was to identify interventions in a gym environment to increase adherence. The study increased average participation from 6 months to 13 months. He then went on to develop a training program to assist retention that has now been delivered to 25 operators involving nearly 93 facilities. Now, during this intensive show, in part 1, you're going to learn what data to capture and to measure to help you build a retention strategy. In part 2, we chat about how to build your customer journey to improve your retention. In part 3, we're going to focus on VIP visits and how they affect your member retention. And in part 4, we explore digital intervention, and that is specifically how to use a CRM system for retention rather than sales. Now, please keep in mind with these intensive series, there is a lot of information within the episode. So here are a few tips from me to you. Number 1, grab something that you can write notes on. Pen, paper, phone, laptop, whatever tickles your fancy. Just get onto this one and get prepared. Now, number 2, once you've listened to the full show, then go over to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com and download the ebook. That way you can work your way through the information on there. You can print off a PDF of the ebook and you can use it with your team. Now, number 3, don't forget, we have specifically broken the show into 4 parts, which means you can listen in one go or you can stop at the end of each section. The choice is completely up to you. Now, before we get started, I first want to say a big thank you to our podcast partner, ABC Financial. To learn why top health and fitness facilities use ABC Financial to simplify their gym management and increase profitability, then head to abcfinancial.com. Enjoy our interview with special guest, Dr. Paul Bedford. It's a great honour to welcome our very special guest for today, Dr. Paul Bedford. Welcome, and thank you for joining us back on the show in 2019.
Chantal, my absolute pleasure. More than happy to be here for you.
It's been a couple of years since we last spoke, and you, of course, are joining us today for our intensive show, and we're specifically talking about steps to creating a retention plan for your fitness business. Now, during part 1 that we're just about to jump into, we're going to talk about defining retention, attrition, adherence, and loyalty. So can you start off by helping us understand what to measure and what data to capture to help build a retention strategy for our business?
Okay, so most clubs have got their membership management systems and they're recording data as and when members join, but it becomes really important that they collect or make sure that they've got accurate date information about the customer. Because if you're going to want to measure retention, you're going to want to measure a time period. And usually the time period we start with is day of joining, and the other date we're looking for is their either last payment or last visit, depending on what type of analysis we're doing. And you'd be not surprised, but when you actually go through data sets and you look at the number of times people have mistyped a date or added an O, the letter O, instead of a 0, because they're almost adjacent on the keyboard. And when you try and run analysis, it won't run because it's got letters in it, not numbers. So I'm always striving to get operators to get really accurate join dates. I'd also want age or date of birth, preferably. I'd want gender. I want membership type, if there's various types of membership packages. I want to collect as many electronic variables as I can so that when I interrogate the data, I can either see if something's having an impact on retention or not having an impact. So let me give you a quick example. When we did the Australian report, we had nearly 1 million member records. And something that's fairly unique to Australia and New Zealand is weekly and bi-weekly payments in terms of how operators take their membership dues. So we looked at it to say, look, do people who pay weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, or upfront, does it make a difference? It makes absolutely no difference to retention how frequently someone pays. What does make a difference, or what it does make a difference to, is the sales numbers. So we can disregard the payment structure as a retention tool, but we can recognize it as a sales tool. So it's really important to sort of get the right information right from the start.
That's fascinating, Paul. So you're saying that research is specific to Australia and New Zealand primarily. What do we see in the rest of the world when it comes to payment plans and the effect on retention?
Well, what we see is that anyone, and we have to think about it as perhaps 3 categories. You've got month-by-month payment with no agreement time. So all they're paying is for a month, and if they want to cancel at the end of the month, they can cancel. Then you've got month-by-month with an agreement time, usually 12 months. And then you've got a payment that is perhaps upfront for the entire 12 months. Every time we've run the data anywhere in the world, and we've run data now on more than 4,500 facilities, month by month, shortest retention. So people who can quit each month quit much faster than people who sign up to an agreed period of time. We think we understand why that is, but it does vary from country to country. But where people go, oh, if they just go month by month, they'll join, we'll keep the price low, and they'll just keep paying. They don't. We've seen it in all the low-cost operators that we've analysed, and some of those are the world-famous low-cost operators, and they just don't stay. So that actual easy in, easy out actually encourages the easy out.
You just took us through before a whole lot of data that we need to collect for our business. Once we've started to collect that data, what's the next step for us when it comes to building that retention strategy for our business?
Well, I think the thing is like getting some clear definitions so that everybody who's hearing the message is hearing it the same way. So when I talk about retention, I'm talking about a period of time. So I could be talking usually in months, because that's the sort of the numbers we talk about, or the measurement we use in our industry. So retention is a measure in months between when someone starts at a club and either when they stop paying or when they stop exercising. And you could actually run both of those. Attrition is a measure of people's cancellation behaviour. So you're measuring people or an activity. So you can't, in some of the ways that people try and calculate attrition, they talk about retention as being the opposite of attrition. It's not. Because if you're measuring one thing in months and another thing in people, the opposite of people isn't months. Yeah. That's just logic. It just makes sense. So attrition we measure and we define as the number of people cancelling. We usually use a figure of per 1,000 customers per month so that we can actually measure a rate, so that we can see if the rate of cancellation is changing, and it's completely separate from joiners. Because you could have, in some of the traditional ways that people measure attrition, if you have a really good sales month, because sales is measured against the number of cancellations, your attrition goes down, not because you're losing less people, but actually because you've made more sales. Reverse of that is you have a bad sales month, you lose the same amount of people as you always did. Your attrition gets worse, not because you did a bad job, but because the sales team didn't sell as many people. So first of all, defining out what, we want to improve our retention. Our retention is the length of time people stay. So you want to be really clear about, well, how long do they already stay for? What would be and we use the median, the average length of time as the median. You can't use the mean with our types of data because it's not evenly distributed. So you have to use what's called the median. What do half the customers do? Half of them stay 9 months, half of them stay more than 9 months, half of them stay less than 9 months. Once you start got data, you can then go, right, so if we know that half of them stay 9 months, what do we need to do and where do we need to intervene in those 9 months to get maybe 10, 11 or 12 months? Or maybe if you're selling yearly through to a renewal phase. So data is quite boring in terms of, looking at it, importing and exporting it into spreadsheets, turning it into graphs. It's tedious, but it tells you where to take action rather than taking some random action that you hope will have an impact that you can't measure. So when we start building retention strategies, we start with the data.
That is awesome, Paul. So I just want to bring all of this home for our first section for everyone that's listening right now. And I love what you said around just truly understanding the definition of these different areas in our business and making sure that it's not just the owner of the business that has a clear understanding. It's everyone that's within your business or that is dealing with retention strategies for your business. So truly understanding the definition of retention and attrition. And then, as you said, right at the very beginning, it is so important that we are capturing the right data before we start on this journey of creating a retention plan, just looking back at our business. And this is, I guess, an action, a takeaway for people to go back now and just looking back at our business and having a look at what data we are currently collecting. Paul, just as a very, very quick summary, can you just go through those points that you mentioned earlier? You started off by talking about the join date. What were the other points that we need to ensure?
I would go join date, age or date of birth, gender, membership type, frequency of payment, and then I just keep adding to that on any electronic records I can get. I'd also want to make sure that I have a clear definition of what a live member is, what I call them dead, but
I was waiting for you to say that.
Yeah. Well, we talk about terminations, so we talk about them as being dead. But a clear definition of what a dead member is, rather than saying, and then who do we consider frozen? Because we always take frozen customers out of any analysis we do, because we don't know if they're going to unfreeze and come back or they're not going to come back. Mm-hmm. So we want that minimum data just to start with. And a tip for anyone looking to do this, when you look at your data fields for dates, check that they are actual dates by clicking on the cell and check it actually says that it's a date, because sometimes it can actually be what's called a string variable. It's actually the equivalent of words, and you can't run analysis on words. You can only run it on numbers. And so it has to be, check the cells that they are actual dates. From there, you can run the analysis.
Okay, that's a great tip. And I really appreciate one of the things that you said early on, which seems so simple, but it is such an easy mistake to make. And that is making sure that our teams are entering their data correctly, not flipping. As soon as you said that the number 0 and then the letter O on our keyboard is kind of almost next to each other, I kind of look down, and you're so right. So you can straight away just get a visual of how easy it is to make that mistake. And yet that having the incorrect data means that we're not getting accurate figures and results for our business.
Yeah. And if you think even sometimes in language, we use O to represent 0. So living like I do in London, someone said to you, what's your telephone code? We go 0208. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's 0208.
Yeah.
And yet we use O. So if someone says you say, what's your date of birth? Sometimes we tap in those things by mistake.
Yes.
If you're looking at, like I do, sometimes 1 million records, you're not going to see an O where it should be a 0 when you're just scrolling down through the pages just to see if you can see anything that stands out.
Okay, well, let's transition now into section 2, and we're going to be speaking about building the customer journey to improve your retention. Now, you say that we should segment member behaviour from member marketing. Can you explain what you mean by that and how we actually do it?
Okay, so the first thing is we use segmented data in our marketing to attract new customers. Again, by age, by gender, sometimes by socio-demographic group. Once they've joined, we should start to segment them based on their behaviours. How frequently are they visiting? What activities are they doing? What are their preferences? What feedback are we getting from them in terms of their net promoter score? So what would the systems we can use to segment to attract them to the club in the first place? We don't want to continue necessarily with those segmentations. We want to look for actually how are they behaving within the club. So for me, I'm always looking at visit frequency as a behaviour, because I know that if visit frequency is low, there's a tendency for that person to drop out.
This is such an interesting one for us to be talking about, Paul, because only about 10 minutes before we jumped on the interview this morning, I was reading something that you had posted, which was about how important it is that we have members visiting, I hope I've got this stat right, four times in the first month that they join with us. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah. Well, the original research was done by a friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Melvin Hilsden, back in 2002. And we've collaborated on lots of projects since, and we run this every couple of years just to check, see if it's still relevant. And what we found is that people are much more likely to stay customers if they visit a minimum of once per week or 4 times per month in the first month. Now, what that meant was a lot of operators, when that number first came out, they started to develop multiple appointment gym inductions to force people to come 4 times in the first 4 weeks. Now, the research never said that. It said if they just turn up, you're okay. But I think it's about managing people's expectations. If you're taking people who've never exercised and saying to them, okay, you're going to train 12 times this month, that's quite a leap from doing nothing to doing 12 times. Now, as someone who was a trainer, I understand that once a week isn't enough to change them physiologically, but it's very, very powerful in changing them psychologically and getting them into a routine. So we know that people who come 4 times a month stay at least 13 weeks longer than people who come less than 4 times in the first month. So it's about easing people in. And my preference now is always to describe visit frequency per month rather than on a weekly basis, because so much fluctuates per week that sometimes people can't get in 3 times in a week, but they could make up a session the following week. So I know with the operators I work with, we're always constantly saying to them, talk to your customers, try and make somewhere between 4 and 12 visits per month. So we give them a range, not an absolute number. And we talk about a month so that people have an opportunity to get at least 4 in over the course of a month.
Paul, just so that we understand, because you mentioned that when that data originally came out, that people were putting programs in place to drive their members, their new members into the club more frequently. In your experience with the clubs that you've worked with, what has been the best connection tool, the best way that clubs have been able to encourage this 4 visits in the first month? Like, what is the best method for us to encourage that frequency?
I think it's a part of it's a clear explanation to the customer about, okay, so you're going to start, if it's particularly for someone who's starting off new or has tried it before but never really stuck to it, think of it like driver education. If you're learning to drive, to start with, you'd have a lesson, you'd learn a few things, then there'd be a break. Then you'd have another lesson where you practice those things again and added a couple of things. And then the more frequently you come in, the more competent you get. When I did my PhD was based around what happens if you do behaviour change in 4 appointments when people start joining. And we added 7 months of membership on top of what people were already staying. So I think it's about explaining to people, you're learning a new skill. No one would expect you to be able to drive after your first lesson. No one would expect you to be able to play the piano to any degree after the first lesson. So we wouldn't expect you to be familiar, let's say, in the gym environment after a 1-hour gym induction.
I think part of that article that I mentioned that I read, or that post that I read this morning, one of the things that you said, or I think JT jumped on and said, was that it's quite often difficult for us as fitness professionals, as gym owners, managers. It's difficult for us to put our shoes back, ourselves back in the shoes of a first-time gym user and a first-time consumer, because for us, we don't think about those challenges that they are faced for the very, very first time. So are there any other tips or insights that you can give us around the mindset or the member behaviour of a relatively new gym member, I should say, that will help us during this process?
Well, I think something when I'm working with my clients, I'm talking to them about is your role in the first appointment, first gym induction, if that's what we're going to call it, is anxiety management. It's not, can they kneel on a stability ball? Can they do the latest kettlebell exercise? Actually, can I manage their anxiety to a point where actually they hear everything I'm saying rather than they hear all their internal dialogue? So for me, where this really struck home was, and it was even before I started studying academically, I remember being in the gym one day and I met a woman and she was having an appointment and we started chatting and I was doing the background, building rapport and trying to find out more about her and her goals and everything. And she said to me, she said, "Oh, Paul Bedford." She said, "Is your mum Jill Bedford?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "She's a school secretary, isn't she?" And I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "I'm a school secretary, but I'm at one of the other schools in the area." And I laughed and she went, "Oh, you think that's funny, do you?" She goes, "I've got 2 kids." And I went like, "Right." She goes, "Yeah, my son's called Paul and my daughter's called Lynn. Now, my sister's called Lynn."
Oh,
stop it. Oh my God. I'm thinking, in a parallel universe, this woman could be my mother. Now, I then looked at the exercise program that I had roughly written out that I thought I was about to give to her. And I thought, if I gave this to my mum, it would kill her. So I was actually prepared to give somebody who I'd only known for a few minutes a workout that would destroy my mother, who was about the same sort of age, exercise history, experience and everything. I was going to kill her. And I thought, if my mum did this, she'd keel over. And I'm going to give it to a woman I hardly know. So for me, one of the ways I do this, I go, what would my mum think of this? How would my mum cope with downloading an app, putting it on her phone? So I think about people I know really well. And I think, what would they need to hear from me as opposed to what do I want to say?
Paul, for this particular segment, when we're looking at segmenting member behaviour, are there any specific actions or takeaways that you would suggest the listeners go out and do before we move on to section 3, which is VIP visits?
Yeah, I think the thing is to think about building skills slowly to build people's confidence. So if someone teaches me an exercise, I get feedback because I'm doing it well, and I get positive reinforcement, I'm more likely to do that again. So rather than giving people things that they fail at, which I know is actually a technique that some people use, give them things they can do, praise them, then show them the next slight variation and say, let's just try this, get them to do it and praise them. So 1 or 2 step exercise patterns, move it up, but just give them things they can do. And my perspective is, I'd rather they get to the end and go, actually, that was really easy, than smile and nod and never come back. So I think break it all down. Think about the gradual progression rather than trying to impress people all the time with just how much we know, because there's just so much to know.
Absolutely. One last question, Paul, before we move on from this particular segment. When we are capturing and tracking member behaviour, where, I guess, two parts to this question. First of all, where is the best place for us to actually record that information? Is it in a specific system within our business? And secondly, how frequently do you recommend a gym manager or an owner actually looks at that data? How often are they having a look at the behaviour of their members?
Okay, so depending upon, most club management systems will be able to provide that to an operator through some sort of report or reporting system. I'd be looking at it, I'd want to know almost weekly what my active member usage is. So if you take someone like Facebook, sometimes they hit the news because they go, oh, Facebook's lost, 40 million users this month.
Yep.
And you think, no, it hasn't. 40 million people haven't been active this month. They haven't lost them. They're still there, but they're dormant. I want to know what proportion of my membership base are active and which ones are inactive or dormant. Because if that starts to go up, I'm storing up problems for the future. But I also want it broken down so I can see how many people have done less than 4 visits, who've done 4, who've done 6, who've done 8, because I want to shift the people who are doing less than 4 to 4, and the ones who are doing 4, I want to shift them to 6. The ones who are coming 8 times, 9, 10, 11 or more, I'm really not going to focus too much attention on them as a retention strategy because they're already in the behaviour pattern of they're going to come frequently.
Paul, let's move on to section 3 because we're going to be talking about retention, VIP visits, interactions, programming, how they interact and how they affect retention. So do you want to start off by explaining to us what you mean by retention VIP visits?
Yeah, well, retention VIP was a project I was doing one point with some customers where we said we're going to just focus on 3 areas: visits, interactions and programming. So the staff responsibility was to drive visits, because if they don't come, it doesn't matter how well educated your staff are. It doesn't matter how beautiful your club is. It's irrelevant. They're not even coming. So if you want to stay in business, people have got to be coming and using your facility. And as I've mentioned previously, you're looking for a minimum of once per week, 4 times per month, upwards. So a lot of the work we do with staff is about asking customers, when are they in next? When are you training next? When were you in last? We're trying to get them into a routine. We've seen that people who follow exercise on a routine behaviour, so same day, same time, actually adhere to their exercise programs, so what we actually prescribe for them, much more strongly, and they retain their memberships much, much longer. So people who train on an ad hoc basis actually drop in and out much more quickly. So for us, visits, we're always saying to people, when are you in next? Are you in over the weekend? When are you in next week? Will I see you tomorrow? Because we want them in their heads to start saying, actually, my next visit is. So even if they're not writing it in their diary, mentally they're making an appointment to visit.
Paul, when we're talking about routine, the first thing that comes to my mind is group fitness classes. And I know that's something we touched on when we first spoke 3 years ago. So can you share with us any of the latest data around retention and group fitness, and where does GX fall into this routine piece that you've just talked about?
Well, I think, and a lot of people consider me a heretic when I talk about it like this. I actually think some of the reasons people come to classes is because it's actually the time and day they can fit in, as opposed to their actual preference for a class. Now, I know there'll be a combination of that, but I think the reason, or part of the reason, people engage in group exercise in the way that they do. Yeah, they want the social interaction. Yes, they want to reduce the cognitive load. They don't want to think about their exercise. They want someone else to think about it for them and lead them through it. But also, once they get that time into their lives and their family, their friends, their work colleagues know they're committed to that time, they're much more likely to keep visiting at that time. And we've seen that, in the small amount of work we've done with boutiques, we've seen the people who come to boutiques on the same day, same time, they continue using the boutiques much longer than those people who, again, come on an ad hoc basis. So it's often difficult within the big operators to recognise who's doing Group X, because the access control is usually at the front of the club. And once they're in the club, we don't know whether they've gone to Group X, the pool, the gym, or a combination. But with some of the clubs where we can access that data, we can see that the people who are more routine stay longer in Group X than the people who are ad hoc in their use of Group X.
Just coming back to our VIP visits, our interactions, our programming, is there anything else that we should know around that area, or are there any tips that you can give the listeners today to really enhance that area before we move on to digital intervention, which we've kind of started to go into?
Okay, so I think, and if you've heard me speak before, and lots of people have heard me say the same thing, I'm going to repeat something that I share almost in every presentation, because I think it's so valid. If we've got customers visiting and we interact with them, if I interact with them in February and I do that just once, the chances of them still using the facility in March goes up by 20%. If I interact with them 2 to 3 times, chances of them coming in March goes up by 50%. If I interact with them 4 or more occasions, which means they need to have 4 visits, chances of them still using the facility in March goes up by 80%. It's astronomical, the impact that just talking to people has on their behaviour in using the club. And that's why we're always driving this thing that, what do we want our staff to say to the customer? Well, almost anything, as long as they interact with them. What would be useful to get them to visit again? When are you in next?
Yeah.
So interaction drives visits drives an opportunity to interact, and so on.
Paul, when I think about that question, when you in next, when you training next, I can see that in a conversation between a personal trainer and their client. I can see it in a conversation between someone that's a fitness instructor that's on the gym floor. Is that also something that you would recommend that our welcome desk team are saying as well? I mean, to me, this seems like a great question regardless, but in your experience, is there anything specific that, we should be getting our welcome desk team to say as people are exiting the gym? Is that the question?
Yeah, the thing we've got people doing a lot of at the moment, and it's very repetitive and you have to find different ways of saying it, is, how was your workout today? When are you in next? So, how was your workout today gets a reference for their current experience. And if it was a good experience, we want them recalling that, because it's one of those moments at the end of their day or the end of their time with us that they're going, I had a great workout today. I did Chantel's class. We also know they're more likely to engage with us on their way out rather than on their way in, because on their way in, they're actually trying to get their workout started and they don't want to stop and talk. So how was your workout today? When are you in next?
Great advice, and there's an excellent takeaway for everyone to check out and implement straight away. Paul, let's move on to section 4. We are going to dive into digital intervention. So talk to us specifically about, you say that we can repurpose the CRM system for retention. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, well, if you think about most CRM systems and most marketing systems, what they're aiming to do is resell. So what I've done with operators is, where you see retargeting, so you click on an ad and then, for the next 3 months, you're haunted by the fact that someone said to you, can you get your grandfather a greenhouse? You click on a greenhouse and greenhouses come up in Facebook and LinkedIn, and you're like, what on earth have I done? Actually, you can take all of that, and when someone's joined, if you can use a retargeting pixel on a joining page, or a thank you page, so someone's joined, you send them a thank you and you target that page, then you can send them reassuring messages, that keep popping up in the first 3 months. Glad how you finding the club. We're glad you're part of our community. Here's a testimonial from somebody who's achieved similar things to you. You can take all of the strategies that you use to attract people and repurpose them to reinforce they've made the right decision. So you don't get any buyer's remorse, buyer's regret. And it's a prompt. So when on Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening, when they're slumped in front of the TV and they've got their iPad in their lap or their Mac in their lap or they're sitting there and they're just aimlessly scrolling, these messages are popping up saying, we're really pleased you're a member of the gym. Look at what this person's achieved. So those sort of before and after shots, you can use all of that to actually just tell people they made the right decision rather than just continue to bombard them with messages about buying PT. I'm not saying you don't do that, but it's not just sale. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is absolute gold. So I hope everyone's listening really closely to this, because it's my belief that what most facilities would do at the moment is utilize those pixels, as you say, for that front end marketing piece and getting the message across. But what happens when they walk in the door? Either A, we turn off the campaign and we don't talk to them again on those platforms, or B, as you say, they continue to get the sales-based messages rather than reinforcement messages, which I love this idea of using digital intervention for our retention or repurposing our CRM. So, Paul, are there any, and I understand maybe you can't give us specific names, but are there any businesses that you have seen that are absolutely nailing this process, or any examples you can point us to so that we can see this process in real life action, or you can explain it to us?
Okay, so I'm not sure that I helped create for Any Time in Australia a whole sequence of these types of digital interactions that are non-sales interactions. So if people are Anytime members, and I know this is mainly for operators, but if they were using an Anytime club, they'd start to see messages coming through that aren't the traditional sales messages. Now, here in the UK, I created a similar type of thing for an operator called Lifestyle Fitness. They think of them more like the YMCAs and the municipal operators. We came up with various versions of welcome letters, welcome videos, instructional information about what to do during your first visit, how to prepare for your first visit, messages that came out after visit 1, visit 2, visit 3, visit 4, in different formats. So people didn't just get email messages, they got SMS. We built up a whole structure. For Lifestyle Fitness, they increased their average visit frequency with their customers that we engaged with that process from 1.5 per week to 2.5 visits per week. So we knew that they were actually visiting about 4 times a month more frequently than before we came in. So they were closer to the 10 visits a month number than the 4 visits per month. And we know that people who are coming at least 2 times a month, 2 to 3 times a week, or 8 to 12 per month, they're probably going to give you about 15 months extra membership compared to those who only come once a week.
Just so that I understand this really clearly, Paul, so are you saying in that the retention, kind of retargeting the activity that we're doing once they have joined, because you just mentioned SMS and email, are you suggesting that we can also put these messages on their social media platforms? Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. And if you can create something, and this is what we've done, if we create things that once they've joined, we can get them to click on something else. So to get your access to your, 5 guest passes for your friends for the first month, click here. We can then take them down the retargeting route for retention and loyalty, as opposed to continue to bombard them with sales.
Yes, super important. So you said that magic little word earlier on, pixel. Are we talking about the pixel on our website, I assume?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So for anyone that's not clear on that. We've actually done a couple of shows, probably not in 2018. I think we did one in 2017 on exactly how to install the Pixel on your website. So if anyone wants to check that out, I'll put it in the show notes for today. We've actually got a step-by-step guide, but certainly your web kind of guru can do that. So let's wrap up this fourth section. So everyone needs to have a look at their current processes as far as, you know, what they're doing currently with their messaging, their marketing messaging to members, how they're utilizing the Pixel. But the important thing that this is all about is, when are we making that transition from them becoming a customer and then changing our messaging for what has now become the person that has now become a member? Are there any specific kind of takeaways or actions that you want to add to that?
I think one of them is make sure you find your voice as a business, so you have a way of communicating with your customers that resonates with the customers. So I know that, like, for my business, I use a very personal tone in all my emails, in all my communications. I always talk about you. You know, if I write something, you need to do this, you need to do that, as opposed to, as a business, you know, to be fair, I'm not very corporate in the way that I do it, because I'm not that type of business. So I think find your voice. But the thing that I would say to any of the listeners today is, if you send something to someone, try and include an activity for them to do. Click on something, watch something, score something. So you get them into the habit that if they receive something from the club, there is something to do, but make it really short. Because then you get them into the habit of clicking. They, you know, watch this 1 minute video, answer this one question of our survey. I'm a strong believer, if I've opened the email, give me something to do. So that I'd, you know, where they can, I'd link them I'd get them to think about that.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, Paul, look, we are so grateful for your time, and I know it's been a few years since we've gotten you on the show, and thankfully I'm very grateful for the fact that I get to catch up with you a couple of times a year. And for everyone that is listening right now and they want to either come and hear you speak, or if they want you to engage with you for their business, or they want to know what's going on in the world of Dr. Paul Bedford, tell us a little bit about what's happening for you in 2019 and where people can connect with you.
Okay, so on a day-to-day basis, if people want to just get in touch, retentionguru.com is our website, and my only phone number is on that site. Mm-hmm. So please be mindful of time zones. And my email address is on there. It's paul@retentionguru.co.uk. Every day we do, Monday to Friday, on LinkedIn, we do lunchtime lessons, which is just a thought for the afternoon. We call it lunchtime. It'll be morning or evening for you, but and it's just hashtag lunchtime lessons, and we put those out Monday to Friday, just to be a thought provoker. As you said, JT mentioned one, and I saw his response to it earlier on. So those are the ways in which people can get in touch and what we're doing. We've got a couple of things ourselves going. We've got the Retention Convention, the 5th one, May the 2nd here in the UK. Chris Stevenson's coming in from the States. Jose Aceteria is coming in from Portugal. And we've got a couple of UK operators speaking. So we've got the focus this year is operators talking to operators. So I know Chris and Jose speak, but technically they're operators. Mm-hmm. So there are no speakers at the event this year. It's just operators. And so we've got that going on. And then I'm going to be in Ursa in March on doing a thing on developing a 5-step digital retention strategy. Those are the main things for the next sort of 3 or 4 months. And then who knows, I've been invited to South Africa and Russia and Portugal and Australia. But that's not till the back end of the year. So I'll be traveling, I'll be posting, and I'll be trying to catch up with everybody as and when I can. But if someone messages me, I will get back to them.
That's phenomenal, and I hope that we do get to see you in Australia later this year. And very quickly, Paul, for the Retention Convention on May the 2nd with our good friend Chris Stevenson, are you streaming that? Is that available for people around the world, or is it at an attendance-only event?
No. So the first 2 years we streamed it live, and we had incredible response to that. However, the cost has become prohibitive. It actually costs more to stream the event than it does to run the event. So what we do now is we record them. So we record all the sessions, and then usually within about a month, we make them available to anybody who couldn't physically attend. Because I appreciate, there's quite a lot of people I chat with in Australia, and they go, we just couldn't come. And I went, no, I understand that. Hang on a month and we'll make the videos available.
Great. So people will be able to jump onto your website and download and purchase those videos. So what we will do for everyone listening is all of the links that Paul just mentioned, we will, of course, put those in the show notes to make it easy for you guys. We will put the link once the retention convention has gone live on May the 2nd, and once the recording is up, we'll also put that link so that you can head over to Paul's website to purchase that. So, Paul, thank you so much. I am very much looking forward to catching up with you in about a month's time at URSA 2019, and we're very, very grateful for you taking the time to join us today.
Chantel, you're always welcome. Happy to do this for you.
Another huge thank you to Dr. Paul Bedford. I have included links to the Retention Guru website in today's show notes so you can reach out to Paul to chat further. Now, there is someone else that I want to thank, and that is our intensive show partner, ABC Financial. I recently had the chance to catch up with their Senior Vice President, Partner Relations, Kelly Card, to chat about the latest news and updates for 2019. Enjoy my chat with Kelly. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome along today's guest. Kelly, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for your continued partnership and all of the great messaging that you constantly drive into the fitness industry with the Fitness Business Podcast. You guys are awesome.
What an amazing way to start our conversation. Well, I want to say a big thank you right back at you, because we are so excited to have ABC Financial as our exclusive partner for the intensive shows once again in 2019. So Kelly, thank you so much to yourself and to all of the team from ABC Financial.
We're just excited to have a great partnership with you.
Now, I wanted to get you on today because it's been a little while since we've had an update. So can you share with us any news or any updates that are happening with ABC Financial?
Oh, well, certainly. Many, many exciting things. This time of year, we are truly hip to hip with our customers plowing through the busy season, but there are many exciting things that are happening. First of all, we are thrilled to introduce our recent acquisition of W12. They have an international club management platform, Evo, out of Brazil that's really going to help our customers scale beyond the walls of North and Central America and give us a strong global footprint. So very, very excited about that. Our customers will also be delighted to learn that we are releasing web browser compatibility with Google Chrome, and that will also enable them to use Mac computers in their clubs. So that's going to be huge. And last but far from least, we are making tremendous progress with our new software platform where we have intense focus on hyper-personalized user experience and aesthetic design and flow. And we will begin the migration of some of our low complexity customers later in the year. So lots of very exciting activity, but so much gratitude to our customers for partnering with us as we really look to innovate the future of the fitness industry.
Kelly, they are three pieces of phenomenal news, and I just wanted to touch on that middle one because I'm imagining there's a lot of people out there that will be thinking, wow, that is seriously cool. Web browser compatibility. I imagine that is something that a lot of people are going to absolutely love within their business. Have you had good feedback so far?
Well, you're the first who is learning of this release. It's a big initiative for us in 2019. So there you have it.
Well, we are very honored to be the first to hear about it. So for those people that are listening right now that want to know more about any of those updates, or if they want to chat to one of the team from ABC Financial and find out how you can help them within their fitness business, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Oh, certainly. By far and away, the best place to go is abcfinancial.com. And we're also on every single social media platform. I would also invite you to find ABC and our leadership, like myself, on LinkedIn, where we contribute regularly with articles and videos and news of what's happening in the space today.
Well, we will put all of those links in the show notes today. So, Kelly, thank you for coming along and chatting to me. Thank you again so much for all of your support. We are super excited for the intensive shows in 2019. And thank you to all of the team from ABC Financial.
Thank you.
And a super big thank you to Kelly for joining me on the show today. And a reminder that if you'd like to speak to the team from ABC Financial, or if you'd like to set up a demo, then go to abcfinancial.com. A reminder that in addition to this podcast, you can also download an ebook of today's intensive show. To find it, all you need to do is go to fitnessbusinesspodcast.com, click on the tab at the top of the page that is called Intensive, then scroll down and press the button that says Access the ebook of this interview. It's super easy. Thank you all for joining me for this special edition of the ABC Financial Intensive Show. Now, don't forget, we have a huge library of intensive courses on sales, financial management, how to start your own YouTube channel, video essentials, and how to start your online personal training business. Plus, our last one just before this, onboarding a new employee. You can find all of those at fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Just go to the intensive tab. As always, I would love to hear what you thought of our latest show. You can email me at any time at chantal@fitnessbusinesspodcast.com. Until next time, what you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others.